What's one of the big lessons that you've learned as that like physician leader?
That it is possible to take care of patients how I want to take care of them. And that's one of the things I love about running my own practice. If something isn't working, I can change it. And I don't have to go through layers and layers and layers and layers of administration, right? More and more and more and more and more. So I found myself seeing patients all day, charting all night, which is really depressing.
Night charting, right?
Because
Yeah.
I had children. I still have children, but they were younger then.
Mhm.
And I can remember a time when one of my kids was like, "Hey, can you help me with my homework?" And I'm like, "No, I got to finish my notes." And I was like, "Oh, and after I said it, I was like, red flag, this is not good." And then I took call.
To residents that are talking about being burnt out, and you're saying, "Oh, you're 2 years into a 3-year residency," or you're wanting to do a fellowship, and it's not really going to change here. Not necessarily women specific, but physicians in general. What advice would you give to them that are maybe struggling with some of that quote unquote burnout, or questioning, is this the right move for me, or am I doing what I should be doing? What advice would you give there?
Well, I really do think if you stay in the traditional system, there are ways to make your life better. So, for example, when I left residency, I worked in a community hospital at Capital Region in Def City, and I was on call 7 to 9 times a month. And I would be on call like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which I found really, really difficult because even if I'm not awake overnight, I was waiting for the phone to go off, and it was hard to get poor sleep for 3 days in a row. And so I ended up going up to the University of Missouri in Columbia, and there were several reasons why I did that. One was I missed academics. I love teaching. I love research. Academics is truly like where I belong, or where I belonged at that point. Now I belong where I am.
Right.
But the lifestyle was better. So I had 4 calls a month, which it sounds minimal, but it's actually huge. And when I took a weekend, it was just a Saturday, not a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I did take a pay cut to do that. But as far as lifestyle goes, and it was worth it. And then when I moved to SLU, I had even less call. And the older I got, the harder call becomes. So when I was, 33, I could be up all night and function the next day. But as I got into my 40s, I could not
Not
do
doing
that
it,
well.
right.
And so at SLU, we only had 2 calls a month. And then what I did, at that point, I was a full-time employee, but the issue was when you're a full-time employee, you're working way more than full-time. Like I said,
15.
charting all night, taking call. So I cut back to 0.8 because there's only so much you can ask of yourself. And so I accepted that I was going to make a little bit less money in order to not mentally crash and not be able to do my job. And physicians who get burnout lose compassion, right? You start not caring. You start like getting mad at your patient. Why is she complaining to me about this? Which is really, you can lose empathy. And that's not the kind of physician that I want to be.
If I was to go to work for Becky Lynn, Dr. Lynn, what would that entail, and what are the things that you actively try to do as a leader to support your staff?
I think that instead of being a top-down type of employer and saying, you will do this, it just comes natural to me to say, what is going to help you succeed? How can we help you succeed? How can we help you create the practice that you want to create? And I'm very sort of open-minded. If someone comes to me and says, I want to do an event. So for example, our esthetician is doing a Mother-Daughter Day facial event, which we did last year. It was highly successful. And she thought of it. I didn't think of it. And she came to me and said, can we do this? And I'm like, absolutely. And we'll support you and help you make it be successful. And some events are more successful than others. Some trials are more successful than others, but we won't know unless we try it. So I really do believe in giving my team autonomy to a certain extent, right? They can't just do anything, but autonomy because they know their practice better than I know their practice. And then we work together to try and help them succeed.